I like your needles. Your needles feel good. I know that sounds weird, but
They're not. What's up, YouTube? It's your boy p.lok back again. I was on Instagram Live yesterday and I had a lot of questions. There's people wanting to know how do I do straight lines, why I use the flux, why do I prefer flat mags over curve, why do I use that type of ink. It was just a bunch of questions that I was trying to answer, so I decided to do something a little different and teach you guys how to do a rose tattoo. I'm gonna show you the whole process. The only thing I'm not gonna show you is how I set up my station because I already have a video on that. So make sure to check my YouTube out for that. I'll leave the link in the description. And besides that, guys, let's get straight to it. All right, guys, so this is my iPad. This is an iPad Pro. This is what I use to set everything up. To start with, I'm gonna jump on Pinterest. This is my favorite app. This is where I find most of my references. The reason I like Pinterest over Google is because it'll show you recommendations for whatever you look up. So for example, here, if you click on a rose, for example, this is a nice one. It'll show you other ones that look similar to it. So let's say I want to use this rose, I'll go ahead and download it. I have some that I downloaded last night. I was looking for the right rose because I'm pretty picky when it comes to roses. After that, I'll head over to my Procreate. And Procreate, this is what I use to sketch everything out. So as you can see, I have a few roses that I saved last night. They're all red, but honestly, you can use any color. We're gonna take the color off of it anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick this one. So the reason I chose this one is because I like the middle. The outside, I feel like it looks a little angled to the bottom. It looks stretched out, but the good thing about Procreate is you can mess with it when you're on here. So I'll go ahead and warp it a little. Just mess with it to my liking. Looks about right. All right, so after I do that, I'll go over to saturation and take that completely off. I'll bump the brightness up a little bit, but you see how it's so dark because it was a red rose? I'll go over to curves and I'll just bump this down. This is pretty much like to mess with the contrast, so anything you do here, it'll mess with the contrast. And the point is to try to get as much white as you can on the outside petals and make it look like the contrast is coming from the inside, so you want it to be dark on the inside. This one's gonna be a little difficult. I think I'm gonna have to use a different rose. All right, so I'll leave that like that, and I'll go ahead and jump into it one more time. Bump the blacks down a little bit. Let me try a different rose. This one looks nice. So I'm gonna do the same thing with this one. Hopefully it doesn't look as dark as the other one. Get those whites down. I'm gonna try one more time. All right, somewhere around there. So I'm gonna have to do some of my own drawing on this just to fix the rose up a little bit, but this is pretty much the rose that I'm gonna go with. I like it because the inside, you see how it has all those that kind of flare out from the middle? That's what I like. So from here, I'll grab a technical pen and I'll just kind of add whatever I want. So I'll fill this one up. I'm gonna throw some leaves on it too, but let me show you how I clean this up first. Whenever you clean something up, you wanna do a mask on top of that image, and you wanna draw on the mask, just so that if you erase anything that you later wanna keep, you can just take the mask off and it'll still be there. So I'm erasing all this background because I don't need it. I'm gonna throw some leaves in the back. So after we have the rose, I usually like to hand draw my petals at least to get an idea of where they're going. So usually I'll just print this out, put it on the skin, and then I'll freehand the petals on. I mean the leaves. But just to give you guys an idea, I'll throw some in here right now. I feel like it just looks better on the skin. But also you want to go based off the body part. Sometimes when you throw leaves on before you put the rose on the body part, I feel like it could look a little weird. So depending on what body part it's on, you can base the leaves off of that. Nothing too crazy, just giving you guys a little idea. Once I put it on the skin, I usually freehand some more on it. But I like to throw these little like vine throwaways in here. Just kind of sticking out. That's my own little touch that I do. And then I usually throw some lighter shading coming out from behind the rose, just to keep these highlights on every rose petal. So after you did that, you want to start stenciling it out to print it in order to make a stencil. And what I usually do is pick a really bright color like this green that I'm using here. Because I already used this green, I'm gonna go ahead and choose a different color. So we can choose something like red. And I'm just gonna start tracing every single rose petal. I noticed that a lot of people do this by hand. The reason I don't do it by hand is because I feel like it was messing up my wrist at one point because I was pressing down so hard on the paper. Besides that, I just feel like it's easier to do it here in case like the size isn't the one that you want. You don't have to reprint it and trace it all over again, or worry about your wrist hurting, especially if you use coil machines. That can really take a toll on your wrist. All I'm doing here is just following the shapes. I usually like to imagine my tones as if I was tattooing, and I'll go ahead and trace every dark shape first. And after I do that, I'll start doing all the light tones the same way that I tattoo. Alright guys, so now that I finished outlining the whole rose, I went ahead and went over the petals too. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the reference from under that. Now that I have this red stencil, I'm gonna bump the saturation and the brightness down the same way I did the first time, just to turn it black so that I can print it out and put it on the skin. So here we're gonna mess with the placement a little bit. Once you have a picture of her thigh, you want to go over just where it's going to go. For this one, I might put it directly in the middle, or maybe move it up a little bit so it gives us space to add more stuff to it. After you have that, you just print it out, put it on, and you're good to go. To start with, I usually clean the area with green soap, and then I'll shave it. Even if you don't see that much hair, you still want to shave it just to get any extra hair that is like naked to the eye. It just gives you a cleaner area to work with. So after you shave it, you want to disinfect the skin with alcohol. And then you dry the skin a little and put the stencil on. So whenever you put the stencil on, you want to measure it. And I usually mark it with the Sharpie just so that it goes exactly where I want it. So I think that's a good spot right there. I'm gonna twist it a little bit just so that it's angled. And the reason I'm twisting it this way is because I'm using it to flow with the body a little, in case she wants to add another rose here later down the road, or maybe down here. It gives us that room to mess with it. So I think that's a good spot right there. After you mark it, you put your stencil stuff, Electrum, or whatever you use. I actually use ultrasound gel. I've been using this for a while and I feel like it works pretty good. It lasts the whole stencil and I haven't had any issues with it. And besides that, it's pretty cheap. You get like 5 bottles for $20 compared to stencil stuff or Electrum, so I like it. So you want to put a nice coat. You don't want to overdo it. If you put too much, the stencil won't stick, but also if you don't put enough, the stencil won't stick. So you want to put enough to where it's tacky to like the glove. And then we put our stencil on. You want to eyeball it. Sometimes it doesn't come out exactly, but you want it as close as possible to the marker. For my stencil paper, I prefer to do it through the iPad because I can print it out on this paper. When you're doing it by hand, you can also trace it on this paper, but it's so thin that it makes it difficult for you to trace it. And I like this paper because it sticks on the skin very easy and it kind of wraps with the body as you put it on. So there you go, that's our stencil. All right guys, so I'm gonna start with the 3-round liner from Quadrant. I'm gonna do the lines on the leaves first, and then I'll start the shading. So the way that I tattoo, I usually start with the outline when it comes to roses on the leaves only. I don't do too much outline when it comes to the actual rose, but the reason I don't is because I like to keep it very realistic looking. I feel like the more lines that you do, the more it takes away from the realistic look of the rose. And these lines are just guidelines. Honestly, I'll go over everything. So I'll get all the outline done on the leaves, and then I'm gonna do some lines on the middle. And after that, I'll pull out my mag and start shading it. All right, guys. I'm gonna use an 11 flat mag from Quadrant now. This is what I'm gonna use to start shading all the leaves. I usually start with the leaves because I wanna get rid of any paint that's in that area so that I can just start moving towards the rose. And if I were to leave this for last, I feel like it would like, the paint would kind of disappear and then you'd come back to it and start messing with it again. So I like to knock it out while I'm working on it. That way I can just continue to work with the rest of the tattoo. So for my leaves, I like to start on the edges. That way I don't leave any empty spots, any skin showing. And this is my solid black from Dynamic. This is my triple black. So I'll start off with triple black, and as I start fading it to the edges, I'll start moving towards the Empire ink. But you want to do triple black on the whole edge of the leaf, just to really make it pop. Notice how I'm patting the skin instead of wiping. Patting the skin really helps with irritation. It just helps the skin not get as swollen. A lot of people say that when you wipe, sometimes it hurts more than the actual tattoo. So you want to pat it as much as you can. I know sometimes even I forget to pat and I'll start wiping, but you want to pat the tattoo as much as possible. That way you're trying to make the pain stay as low as possible towards the end of the tattoo. So right here, I'm gonna start flicking some of this texture out for the rose petal. This is just me grabbing my mag to the side, and I'm just going back and forth. That way I'm getting smaller streaks. For this, try not to go in too deep because you could cut the person up very easy, especially on this area where the skin is like super stretched out already. So I'm going back and forth, but I'm just lightly tapping the skin, nothing crazy. It doesn't have to be fully saturated because I'm gonna shade right over this, so this is just to give it that texture. So this is my light wash from Empire Inks. I'm gonna start blending some of this out. This is the light wash, not the super light. So it still looks a little dark, but it'll allow me to start blending some of this out without going too dark like the solid black. And I'm still keeping this back and forth motion, nothing crazy, but you definitely want to be consistent with this. I'm still doing this back and forth motion, but I grab my lightest tone, which is the extra light from Empire. And I'm just lightly tapping this corner. I'm not getting too close to the edge because I want to leave that glare. And I'm just feathering this out, nothing crazy. For the edges, I always like to leave a little bit of a glare on the corners. I feel like it just makes it look like the light's hitting it. But honestly, every leaf, every rose petal is a little different, so just have fun with it. For some, I'll just grab the side like this. And because it's a corner, it usually leaves a glare, so I'll just shade on the other side like this and leave that white spot in the middle. And take advantage with this tone because this is the tone that really helps to blend stuff out. So if there's any areas where you feel like it's too harsh of a stop or you need some smoother shading, just take advantage of your lightest tone and fade that out. I'm going over the solid black with my lightest tone. And this is gonna give it a smoother transition. So this is my medium tone from the wash set. I'm gonna start shading outside of here because I wanna move away from this area. I'm pretty much done with this rose petal. So I wanna start shading under it so I don't have to come back and do it later. And I'm also gonna use this medium tone in other areas, but I'll start with this. So this is gonna be a little darker than what I did over here, but I like to switch it up a little bit. Oh, and for those wondering, I'm actually running my machine at 7.5 right now. And this is the flux, like I said earlier. The needle that I'm using for this is a 15 flat. So whenever I'm doing big shading like this, I try to grab the biggest mag that I can. Right here, I'm actually grabbing the edge of the rose petal with the side of the flat mag, and then I'm shading outside. with the other side, so you always want to clean that edge up first and then shade. So this is still my medium tone. As you can see, it's starting to finish up because it's not coming out as much from the needle, but what I'm gonna do now is dip it straight into the tone after this, which is your lighter tone. So I'm dipping it straight into the light. I'm not cleaning the needle out. That way I can still get a little bit of a blend between both tones. And that'll help you blend it a little better. Dipped it straight into the light tone. Now I'm back to shading. And you want to start feathering away so we can get that nice blend. Switched over to my liner. I'm gonna outline this other leaf that's back here. It's kind of hidden. I'm gonna do the same thing that I did with the other leaves. I'm gonna outline it, do the lines on the inside. And then as you can see right here, I kind of went over these two vines that I have like sticking out. So I'm gonna go over these right now. So I'm back to my solid black. I'm gonna start with the edges right here. Making sure to hit all those edges, not leaving any skin visible. I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the other leaves. Also, if anybody wants to see how to do my drop set system that's not Empire ink, just let me know in the comments and I'll do a separate video on that. All right, so I'm gonna start blending some of the solid black out. This is my light tone from the same ink set. And I'm just doing the back and forth motion right off of the black. Making sure that I'm grabbing some of the black as well as some of the skin. So I'm pretty much grabbing half of the skin and then going into the black a little bit, coming back out and doing that just back and forth motion. I'm just tapping the skin, nothing too crazy. All right guys, I'm switching over to the Sol Nova. My other machine actually died. I forgot to charge it last night, so I actually like this one better though. This is the Sol Nova from Cheyenne. And I have a critical battery on it, so let's get it done. Let's see if I can still do the same work with a new machine. Up to this point, I've pretty much done most of the darks. I've left a lot of light. this area right here, I'm gonna start working on some of the lighter tones, as you guys can see right here. And I'm gonna start just touching up the corners first and then brushing that shading up. Most of this is gonna be done with the light tone from Empire Ink. So this right here is my 7 mag from Quadrant. I'm using this at an angle, just brushing away from the corner right here. Guys, and the reason that I use this ink ease ointment that I have on my hands is to allow the ink to glide on the skin. So if you don't use this ointment, besides the fact that it reduces the redness and everything, if you don't use this ointment, it'll cause the ink to smudge like how it does in these dry areas. So the ointment helps the ink glide on the needle tip, and it just helps the ink, I guess you could say, last a little longer, as well as reducing the redness from the tattoo. So it's like it has like 2 good benefits of using it. Some people use Vaseline. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I also think if you're gonna use something that's gonna go in the skin, why not use something that's gonna benefit it, like A&D or one of these brand name ointments like Ink Ease. But you know, everybody has their own preference. All right, back to the outline. So I'm doing the other leaves here. I'm gonna do these and then I'm gonna go back over to these. These are the last few leaves. My client is thugging it out right now. Skin is a little irritated, but I usually throw a little bit of Bactine over that to help with the irritation. Kills a little bit of the pain, as well as helps with the swelling. All right guys, so I'm done with all the grays now. I used the extra light tone over here at the top, and I finished the other leaves that went towards the top as well. So what I did was I went back with the extra light and I just touched up any areas where I wanted to blend it out. At this point, I'll spray some Bactine over the tattoo just to reduce some of the redness. Besides reducing the redness, it also has lidocaine in it, so this will help with the pain a little bit. It won't fully take it out, but it'll at least help for that white, you know, that last little bit that everybody hates. So I'll spray this on and I'll leave that on for about 5 minutes before I start on the whites. All right, so I have a new needle now. This is gonna be for all the highlights. This is T-Tech and it's a 5 liner. For your whites, you always wanna grab a new needle because if you decide to use the same one that you outlined the black with, it'll give you a grayish tone instead of giving you that solid white. So you always want to grab a new needle and just start with the new one. That way all of your highlights come out super bright. You don't want to mix any of that gray wash in there. All right, so for the highlights, I try not to overdo it. I feel like when you put too much, it'll make it a little muddy. So I'm gonna put it on all these shiny parts of the rose petals, usually where the light hits. So when you're throwing white highlights like this, you usually want to take your time. You don't want to go over it fast like a black outline. The reason for that is I feel like white takes a little longer to go into the skin. Doesn't go in as easy as the black does, so you want to take your time with the white. White highlights are usually just used to make stuff look a little brighter, make it pop a little, you could say. I know that a lot of people use whites for other areas, but I usually just use it for highlights. And I try to make the tattoo look very well contrasted before I add the white. All right guys, so we're done now. This is a little foam soap that we have here. We make it ourselves. My boy actually makes it, so it's pretty convenient. This is what we use at the end, and it takes off all that, you know, remained in black that you have and white ink that smudges pretty easily. So I'll rub this on pretty good, and I have a last step that I do, so let me show you guys right after I wipe this. I usually massage it a little to push that blood away from the tattoo area. I feel like once you do that, it'll push the remaining blood out, and then you get a clean wipe and you get your white highlights to show up pretty bright. All right guys, so this is one last step that I use, and it's rose water. You can get this at any CVS. I'll spray it on and I'll leave this on for about 5 minutes. I feel like it's pretty good at reducing the redness of the tattoo so that you can get that nice picture at the end. And besides that, it also helps with the soothing a little bit with the pain. Takes a little bit of that irritation off. You get that cool feeling on the tattoo. So we'll leave that on for a little bit, pat it dry, and then we'll get you some final pics. All right guys, so that's how you tattoo a rose with me. I hope you guys found it inspirational. I hope you liked it. You know, that's how it works for me. That's how I've been doing my roses for a while now. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. You know, I'm down to give some more tips and tricks on whatever I can. And make sure you guys follow us on Instagram. I'm gonna drop the pictures of the final product. I'm also gonna be posting just everything that we do on Instagram and here, so stay tuned for that. Also, if you guys get this video to 5,000 likes, I'll be sure to give another giveaway out. Probably something bigger, like a whole half-day session. So make sure you guys run those likes up, you know, show some love, show some support, share to your friends, family, everything. With that being said, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.